Welcome back, everyone. The last thing we have to do before we can start reassembling the boat is to coat the metallics. So rather than just allodyning them or putting a protective coating, I actually want to get something that's a little bit grippy. So I found this pretty cool material that's called Tuff Coat. It's meant to be used around pools and water parks and everything like that. I got specifically the Submersible kind in hopes that it'll hold up a little bit better to the salt and everything. But this should be pretty cool stuff. I'm super excited to see how it goes on. It's a rubberized coating that has some texture to it. So if in the future we're up on the trapeze and feet out on the side, we don't have to worry about slipping off the metallic structure. But before we apply the coating, we do have to prime it with a metal primer. And the metal primer etches the metal to make sure we get a good chemical bond. We'll go ahead and get everything masked off like you see here and sanded down and prepped, and then we'll start brushing on the primer. Since we're going to be painting the metallic structure, we are using a metal etching primer, so we don't want to get any of that onto the brand new gel coat. So we're going to mask off, right up to the posts, and then lay paper on top in at least one, if not two layers. We've got all of the areas under these metallics masked off, so I've already sanded most of them, but we'll go back through, hand sand everything again. I'm going to try and clean off some of the areas inside the castings that I couldn't reach with the orbital sander, and then we'll come back through with sandpaper and get the rest of it, so that way we have a nice clean bonding surface, and then we'll run across everything again with 80 grit by hand. And then we'll start masking off, these top rails and everything, and where we would put the trampoline. So I'm gonna start off just trying to knock off some of the corrosion with a brass brush, and then we'll get into the rest of the hand sanding. Naturally, forgot safety glasses. We'll get back into it. It's like brushing your teeth. Got some 80 grit. All right, so we got all the residue vacuumed off, but now we need to wipe it clean. So learned my lesson from the gel coat. We're gonna use the non-woven wipers, and I have a metric ton of them, so may as well use them up. And we're just gonna be using IPA per normal. Ooh. First wipe, already got some good residue. Step before we can get into priming the surface is we need to do some masking, mainly on these rails, so that way we don't get any of that thick elastomeric coating into the rails. So what I'm going to do is just take the normal masking tape and tape on top, and then come through and trim. If the coating gets on the side of the rails, it's not going to be that big of a deal. For any holes, we'll probably have to go through with a drill bit and clear them out in the end. So what I did is stick one side down along the bottom all the way over, And then once I got to the other side, I just rolled it up and then stuck it to the top. So this should be good enough to fill that gap. It'll be sticky, but we'll be able to paint and then pull this afterwards or run a razor blade along it afterwards to cut the coating nicely and not impede the trampoline going on. And here's a clip of what that process looks like. So we're taking the tape out, adhering it to the bottom of the track, and then once we get to the end, we're cutting it and then rolling it over and sticking it back inside to the top. This should be good to go ahead and prime. Once we prime, we have 48 hours to start doing the elastomeric coating. We're gonna go ahead and glove up. Now I've never used a metallic primer before. It does have some sort of chemical corrosive element to it, so normally if I was just doing a normal paint, wouldn't be too concerned about double gloving, but I'd rather not get chemical burns or anything like that. So we're gonna double glove and then we'll go ahead and open up the paint. We're just gonna paint straight out of here. So I've already been mixing it a little bit. It seems pretty thin. It is water-based, so I'll probably just throw the mixing stick in and then make sure it's evenly mixed. Oh, that's the seal that goes around it. So we are gonna wanna go ahead and take that out. I've had issues with this in other areas before where that seal actually starts to contaminate the coating. So definitely want to make sure to get that out. We don't want to be painting that on. Oh yeah, there's all sorts of solids at the bottom here. So that's the stuff we got to break up. And this is why even if you shake, you still make sure to test mix. All right, so we brought over the mechanical mixer. No idea what else to do other than this. The primer is, 40% solids by weight. This is pretty much the only option we have. All right, let's try and go ahead for round 3. So this time we're gonna try and do what I should have done last time, which is we're not gonna stir it with the mixer first. Instead, we're gonna mix with this at the top and then slowly work our way down. So I think pulling all the material off the bottom the first time yesterday was, our mistake, because we weren't able to slowly work the solids into the rest of the material. I think I'm gonna call that good. Now for the fun part, we paint. The goal here is to apply one coat that's not too thick. All right, so it's the next day now. All of the primer has dried. You can see the chalky white pretty much everywhere. So now we can go ahead and mix up the coating, the elastomeric coating, and start rolling it out. We got the coating here, but before we mix it up, we need to go ahead and cut this roller down. So this is the roller Tuff Coat recommends using with their product. Obviously it's made by them. The issue is this coating is generally made to go on large surface areas, so it's a 12-inch roller. I did buy a little 4-inch roller piece, so we'll need to cut this down to the appropriate size so that way we can fit it in most of the smaller areas. The areas that we can't fit the roller, like around the corner castings, we'll just apply it with a paintbrush. We won't get as much of the rubber granular using the brush, but on the corner castings, it's not that big of a deal. The areas where we would be placing our feet and need the grip, we'll be able to hit with the roller. So we'll go ahead and measure this, cut the roller down first, and then we'll get into mixing the coating. So let's test fit it on here. It looks pretty good. A little bit of gap, but that's not that big of a deal. So now we can go ahead and start mixing up the elastomeric coating, and then we'll pour it into the paint tray. Sadly, I didn't get any liners, so I'll just have to make sure that this is washed out really well after we're done. And last but not least, the lid. All right, so that's a nice gray color. The same thing as with the primer, but probably significantly worse. This has a lot of aggregate at the bottom. That's that rubber material, which gives it the grippy texture. So rather than doing the same mistakes that we made with the primer, we're not gonna stir it with the stick first. We're gonna go straight over to the paddle on the drill, and we'll slowly work our way from the top down to the bottom. And that'll make sure that all that material that's sticking to the side stays stuck there, and we'll slowly mix the aggregate in with it rather than clumping it up into a huge clump and then just moving that clump around. So yeah, I can feel the aggregate right there, so it's about 50%. So mixing the top first, now we can start seeing some of the aggregate flow up to the top surface. And just work our way down, work our way back up. Now it's kind of looking like grits. Alright, I'd say that's pretty well mixed. You can see the aggregate forming on the paddle already. So that's what we kind of expect to see when we apply the material down. It should take a couple hours for this material to cure, and we'll need to do 2 coats.
I will say I think this roller is really key to applying this material because the foam is very porous. It grabs the aggregate and distributes it appropriately, which is how we're really getting the texture. The areas where I applied with a paintbrush where the roller wouldn't reach, it definitely didn't have that same texture.
Super happy with how this is coming out. Now we're gonna switch over to paintbrush, which is what you didn't get to see the first time because the camera got too hot. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm scraping a good amount of the aggregate into whatever liquid is still there, mixing it up nicely, and then I'm just gonna dab it in place. So brushing doesn't really do anything, it just pushes the aggregate around. So you have to dab it to get it to where you want it to go. All right, it's been another couple days and all the grippy coating is completely cured now. So we're gonna go ahead and start removing the masking. So you can see that the material didn't adhere to the rail really well. That's kind of expected because we didn't surface prep it. But you know, when we get over to this side, you can see where there was some masking material and the coating was on top of it. So when I pulled the masking material, it pulled that section up. So we're definitely going to be using a box cutter to help us cut that coating around the tape where we need it. So especially in areas like this, you can see that we can't really see where the end of the rail is and where the tape starts. So we'll just gently go in with the box cutter and cut the coating along that area and then pull the tape up. And then these little areas like this will come back through and just clean them up a little bit so that way they look good. And after we get all the masking removed, we'll come through and drill all of these holes back out. We don't necessarily want to cut the metal. If we do a little bit, that's fine. But the primary goal here is going to be to clear any of this additional coating out. And we'll do the same thing on these holes, and especially on the holes where the dolphin striker goes through. These ones we might actually open up a little bit because the corrosion was so bad. But we'll start with just trying to clean them out and then test fit everything and start reassembling. I'm just gonna come in here with the razor blade and try and clean these edges up just like this. Try to make sure that there's, you know, no material in the gap. All right, all the rails are nice and cleaned up to where they're not gonna ideally stop up the trampoline from going on. So now we're gonna go ahead and just carefully cut around the base of the pylon with the razor blade. All right, so that should be good. Then we can start to remove all of this masking. Ooh, and look at that nice surface. All right. So far, so good. Ooh, that is nice. We're also going to come through with silicone and fill the gap in the back of the pylon again and seal along here and get a nice, you know, fillet surface. So this will look even cleaner once we're done with that. So we're gonna go ahead and do the other 3, and then it'll be time to clear out the holes. Okay, so we're ready to drill out all of these rivet holes. The rivets are 3/16, so the drill size we need for that is a number 11, but I don't have numbered drills, so the closest thing is 13/64. So that's the drill we're gonna be using, and we'll just simply drill it out. And this will help drill out any corrosion that was in it as well. All right, I think we'll go ahead and use this 1/2" bit. And we'll just do a little bit of that. I think these might actually be the same size. They are. And I'm gonna go from the other side. Now we're at the other side. So for these ones, we're gonna be using a 13/32. Okay. There's a lot of corrosion in there that we had to clear out, so these ones are a little bit rough. I'm just trying to be careful not to destroy any of the other coating. Now finally we have the tie downs for the trampoline. I think this size is gonna be good. So this is a 5/16. So you drill that out with a 5/16. So the reason we're clearing this out is because this leads the rope into here, so we don't want it getting hung up on the coating. Go all the way down to 3/8.
So with this larger drill bit, we're creating a countersink to lead in the trampoline tension.
There you go, that looks good. Well guys, thanks for watching. That's gonna be it for this video. Now that we've got everything coated, we're gonna be ready for reassembly. So stay tuned for that when we pull it all together and reassemble everything.